Boys and girls, is the world getting more violent, you think, or not? We're gonna find out. I think so it is. Honestly, I think so it is. Everybody is on that line, on that, that line of anger. Anything wrong, you say, boom, pop, 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 gone, No one cares these days, really, But yeah, I think so we are getting kind of violent, or even you talk about the whole world. I think the whole world is getting more violent. But yeah, we're gonna watch this video from kurzgesagt in a nutshell. But yeah, let's see what he got. I really like his videos and animation.
10 years ago in 2014, we asked if war was over. Based on long-term trends in the last century, it seemed violent conflict was on the decline and the world more peaceful than ever.
We want that again.
Our video
please.
began with the Russian invasion of Ukraine and the war between Hamas and Israel.
But yeah, I think so. Hamas and Israel, the news just came out that they went for peace. I don't know how long that will last, but hopefully. But still, it's a good news, and hopefully that they continue that.
And, well,
peace,
a decade later, we could start this video exactly the same way. But is the world as a whole more violent today?
I
think
In a nutshell, so, yes.
We made 7 claims in 2014. 1. We have less conflict deaths than ever. 2. There were almost no more wars between countries.
Okay.
3. Democracies don't fight each other. 4. Borders are mostly fixed. 5. Most conflicts are in areas that were under foreign control, either by colonial states or Soviet dictatorships. 6. More civil wars are ending by diplomacy.
Okay.
7. We're in the most peaceful period of history.
That I also think, honestly, like, there aren't many wars and, too much bang going on as many years ago, hundreds of years ago, you can say, because like World War I, World War II, and there were many other small wars as well in between those times, But still, I think so, yeah, if you really compare to those times than this now, of course, we are like doing better, but still I feel like many countries are really on the line that if you do this, we're gonna attack you guys, and then you attack the other country, that country allies come here, and then they attack you, and then they attack you, then kind of that's how kind of war starts, But yeah, I hope nothing happens, at least till at least this generation. I just hope nothing happens like that, man.
So let's see how our video has held up.
Okay.
First, let's get an overview of conflicts in the last decade. Some of the deadliest conflicts that were glowing hot in 2014 have since ended or significantly cooled down. The war in Afghanistan ended with the victory of the Taliban.
Yeah.
While the civil wars in Yemen and Libya are all still ongoing, they turned mostly into stalemates. The proto-state of ISIS in Iraq and Syria has been wiped out. And, breaking news, the rebels just won the war in Syria last week. The extremely destructive civil war in South Sudan ended in a fragile peace agreement despite violence still flaring up in the devastated young country. Sadly, the last decade saw a bunch of new conflicts erupt, or old unresolved issues turn violent. One of the main claims of our video 10 years ago was that wars today are not between countries, and this is still largely true.
Yeah.
Civil wars are by far the most common type of state-based conflict in the world. We'd wager that most of you have never heard about one of the deadliest civil wars in decades, the 2020 Tigray War in Ethiopia. It ended in 2022 with the victory of the Ethiopian and Eritrean government forces against rebel groups.
Okay.
Exact death tolls are unknown, but they may exceed 500,000, mostly civilians.
Wow, we really didn't heard about this war, huh? That's sad. That's crazy and sad and weird. That how news and how social media works,
Aside from Tigray, a number of new civil wars have broken out since 2014. Although new is a bit misleading since the underlying issues were brooding at a smaller scale for a long time. The deadliest have been the Sudan Civil War, the civil war in Yemen, and the civil war in Myanmar.
Oh.
Multiple nations in Africa like Mali, Nigeria, Somalia, Burkina Faso and Mozambique are suffering from Islamist insurgencies that destabilize countries and have cost tens of thousands of civilian lives. Lastly, there are nearly 60 smaller unresolved state-based conflicts around the world, many going on for decades, that are smoldering but have a relatively low death toll in comparison.
True, true.
Maybe the worst news is that we've been seeing interstate wars again. There was the short-lived 2020 war between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which redrew contested borders. Then there's the latest war between Israel and Hamas that turned into a regional crisis.
Yeah, man.
What is certainly the most disturbing new development is the full-scale invasion of Ukraine by Russia. It's the first large-scale interstate war in 20 years, and the first war since World War II where a major power is trying to conquer territory and to subjugate another state. It followed an 8-year conflict that started with the 2014 Russian annexation of Crimea and the war in the Donbass. Exact casualty rates for the war since 2022 are hard to verify, but they go as high as hundreds of thousands.
Wow.
Okay, so what about our 2014 claims? If we add up the numbers, we see a few things. Roughly between 2004 and 2014, there were about 350,000 deaths from state-based conflicts worldwide. They were going down from 2014 to 2019 and then rose sharply in 2021.
Oh, sheesh.
In total, from 2014 to 2024, we saw about 1.2 million deaths.
Damn.
If we include all violent conflicts like the Mexican drug war, the
So that was without all the Mexican and drug violence.
Number rises to 1.5 million, 3 times higher than the previous decade. Actually, 2022 had the highest death toll from violent conflict since the Rwandan genocide in 1994. The Tigray War and the war in Ukraine alone were responsible for the majority of lives lost, as both wars involved armies of hundreds of thousands of soldiers, sometimes thrown against entrenched positions in human wave attacks. So, the last 3 years have been unusually violent.
Right.
But if we zoom out a bit more, we can put those numbers into perspective.
Whoa. Okay, 1940s was crazy, dude.
A terrible thing, but nowhere near how bad it can get when the world goes to war.
Right.
In the grand scheme of things, we are still living in relatively peaceful times. But the next decade will show if the trend will reverse or if the last few years were an anomaly. Unfortunately, there have been proper wars between states again, so our prediction on wars between countries didn't hold up. What is as true today as in 2014 is that almost all armed conflicts in the world are in countries that were under foreign occupation in the 20th century, either by colonialism or by the expansive Soviet dictatorship. Ethnic groups were split apart or forced together by arbitrary borders, resources unequally distributed, or power vacuums created, which led to conflicts that are in many cases still unresolved. There have also been no wars between democracies who seem uniquely unwilling to fight each other. So compared to the last century, it's still true that war between nations is still an exception rather than the rule. On the other hand, we see fewer civil wars end by diplomacy. Instead, there's an increase in either victories or stalemates. These often aren't permanent resolutions to the conflict, only pauses in the fighting, because the underlying causes haven't been solved. For our claim about borders, we can see that most international borders in the world still hold up and are not challenged, but there are still a few dozen territorial disputes in the world, most of them in Africa and Asia. And some are getting hotter, like the border clash between India and China over Aksai Chin and Arunachal Pradesh. China's claim to Taiwan, or Venezuela threatening to annex part of Guyana's oil-rich province Essequibo. One thing that makes wars so deadly is that they're often supported by external powers. Many countries are providing support or arming up different sides or factions, like the competition between Saudi Arabia and Iran for hegemony, with Iran being the main supporter for the Houthis, Hezbollah, or Hamas. Or in the Ukrainian war, with the West supporting Ukraine, while China, Iran, and North Korea support Russia. But it's not just countries. External powers keeping conflicts alive
allies,
can also be Islamist groups like ISIS or criminal networks, or even local elites that benefit from their own country being torn apart and effectively prevent conflicts from ending. The end of the rules-based world. There's a lot of debate among experts about what factors make the world more or less peaceful, but there are no easy answers. One of the major reasons the world has seen less conflict was that after the end of the Cold War, many countries expected a sort of rules-based world order. And for a time, this worked somewhat. But things have been changing in the last few years. The world has become multipolar, with new alliances forming, and the idea of a rules-based world is being challenged. China's manufacturing capacity is now as big as the US and Europe's combined. With its massive economic development, a new superpower has risen.
Right. I think so. Next superpower will be China for sure.
Common knowledge that the US spends more on its military than any place in the world.
True.
But this may
they spend around 996 billion. 996 billion, yes.
No longer reflect the true balance of power. China doesn't report all of its military spending like the US does, and it gets a lot more done with each equivalent dollar spent. Recent estimates trying to account for these differences tell us China's effective military budget is now a significant portion of the United States.
See, that's 800 billion, but I think so the updated, the last year, 2024 one, or maybe a few years before that, was 996.
States' budget. And with Russia breaking the taboo of launching the first war of conquest by a major power in almost 80 years, Europe has begun the process of rearming. It is slow because, well, Europe is slow, but it is happening. We're in the transition to a multipolar world again, with different nations and alliances claiming spheres of power they want to dominate.
Okay.
In this climate, tensions and conflicts between states have been rising, even if most of them have not turned into wars yet. So, is war over?
Not
the clear
really.
answer is no. And the direction we're headed in doesn't seem great. But with all the gloom, it's also true that we are still in a peaceful period of world history.
That's true as well.
Deaths by war are still at historic lows. The world is at a crossroads. We'll do another update video in 2034.
2034, dude. Okay.
Let's all hope we'll have better news for you then.
Alright, this was the video on is the world getting more violent or not? And I told you the answer earlier that no. And the answer is no in the video as well. I mean, it's not like exactly no, like no, you know. But yeah, still I would say yeah, kind of, not really. It's not that peaceful, you know, and we are getting violent, but not on that, you know, scale of having a world war, you know. But still there are many wars happening almost every day, going on continuously, going on in many countries, many continents, you can say, and you never hear about them because it doesn't get in the news and all that. It just stays low, and any kind of the other war which is bigger than that just comes in the news, and or whatever the social media or the news or the country really wanna show, they control that, and then you get to know like, oh, only this war is going on, or Ukraine or Israel and all that, you know. This was a good video. Like, I really like that their video always. But yeah, that it really gives you the answer that we are living in really good times by now. We all should be really thankful of that we don't have crazy wars, world war at least, going on for decades. We don't have that, which is really good, really nice, really peaceful, and I hope it stays like that. And people who are going through all these wars, and I hope they get through it alive, and yeah, whoever passed away, RIP. But yeah, there are still many wars going on, but still people, the countries and people are changing, and countries are trying to be more helpful or be more allies with other countries than directly going war with them, you know. And they're getting more understanding, you can say, which is good, you know. But yeah, overall, yeah, this was the video from kurzgesagt and about a war, and I really like he also talked about so many other wars which I never heard about, which I never thought that they are going on, because they are just too small or they never make it to the news. and it also talked about many big wars or many kind of updates that happened recently between countries which are having wars, that which country did what, which country were having wars and came to peace. And recently an update came when I am recording this video, that about Israel and about all this Palestine war, that they made some kind of peace after many years, which is good, and I hope it stays like that, and I hope many other countries follows that rule and make a peace with each other and stop this war, because there's no benefit in wars, dude, for real. Any kind of wars you can say, or fights you can say. But yeah, overall really good video, and yeah, I'll see you guys in the next one.